Hopefully you managed your risk last week. It was pretty wild. We had a ton of earnings. We had the Fed decision on rate cuts, which they did nothing. And then now we also have a new Fed chair placement, Kevin Warsh, coming in that has a history of being typically hawkish. We have a lot of moving parts in this market right now, so there's a lot to cover. So let's get right to it. S&P 500, you can see basically over the week, we did nothing. We opened up on Monday at 69.2323, and we closed on Friday at 69.39.02. This is basically from the last week's close, where it closed on Monday. So we were up 0.34% relative to Friday's close. But really, in the grand scheme of things, we did nothing. EMAs, they can't find a direction. We keep chipping away at all-time highs, but it's not really a strong breakout. It's not decisive, really. We're still holding the 50 EMA, which is good. We have a couple of days of bottoming tails in here. Friday was an inside day on Thursday. So we really just kind of have to wait and see which way we break, whether it's to the upside or whether it is continued chop, or if it's to the downside. We shall see. RSP, I have a little bit of a rounding top here. We'll see what actually holds. We got a nice bottoming tail holding the 21 EMA, undercutting it, then coming back on over. The trend is your friend. So the trend is still up overall, and there's nothing really more to say about that. NASDAQ, NDX, the cash index for the NASDAQ, continues to do nothing. It finally broke this level, which it was having a hard time breaking out of, but it ran it, and then guess what? It came right back inside. We closed below the 8 EMA, below the 21 EMA. We're still holding the 50s, but look at this kind of wavy type action in the EMAs. This market, I mean, you can just look at it. It's not doing anything. It just continues to chop sideways. There's no decision on direction right now. And if you're trying to swing trade this, good luck. This is a very hard market to swing trade at this point in time, simply because of this lack of direction, especially if you're in big tech. So right now, really, the whole adage of you make 80% of your money 20% of the time, well, right now is at 80% of the time that you're not making your money. Ideally, you're sitting on your hands and not getting clipped and by paper cuts, basically. Let's look at the equally weighted S&P, or equally weighted NASDAQ, sorry. This, again, the picture is the same. It's not doing anything. It's just chopping around. I see, you see all these highs and low things that I marked out. Nothing is staying true. There's no consistency. The EMAs aren't doing anything. Nothing is true. All right, let's get into the heavyweights, the guys that actually move the market. So it was a pretty busy week. We'll dive into Microsoft at first. You can see a pretty obvious double top. I have an anchored VWAP from the all-time highs, that light blue line. You can see it broke these the support area. It chopped around, consolidated. The support became resistance, and guess what? It broke that support. And then, this was could have been a little oopsies, undercut and fail. However, earnings was a very different story. So overall, Microsoft total revenue was $81.3 billion. It was up 17% year over year. EPS was 5.16 GAAP, which was up 60%. The Microsoft Cloud had 51.5 billion, so that was up 26%. It was the first time it was over 50 billion quarterly. So that's kind of the headline growth driver there. Azure usage was up 39%. AI and Copilot pretty much exploded with over 15 million paid Copilot seats. Ads were up 160%. So the biggest thing here is the Capex. They are spending a ton on AI and infrastructure. Around 30 billion was spent on AI data centers. And so that's most likely why this is getting hit. The market's basically saying, hey, we don't necessarily trust what's going on just yet, because these companies are not making a lot of money with AI just yet. It is a long-term plan. It's a long-term idea, but short-term right now, they're spending a ton of money for build out, and they're just not seeing returns right now. So I think that's why it's getting hit. We shall see. But either way, the bottom line is that AI is very real. It's not going to go anywhere. The cloud is dominant, but the CapEx and the guidance spooked the street a little short term. But long term, I don't think it's going anywhere. If we want to, so earnings day, the next day is the day to trade it. Otherwise, I don't really trade it until at least 3 days after earnings. So how we can plan this is basically this box here is the average participant price. It's a pivot over the last 3 days. If we want to have some sort of plan, we can look at a shorter time frame and say, hey, here's some highs, let's connect some lines. Here are some lows, we can connect some lines, and then maybe whatever way this breaks out, we can go with. You can also, so the volume, if you notice on earnings, that's pretty huge. That's a lot of volume. That's the most volume it's had in years. Basically, I don't know, since 2016. You can't necessarily trust volume, but if you pay attention to it, that could give you a clue onto something. So what you can also do is put an anchored VWAP on the earnings, and you could see, basically use that to see where the average participant since earnings is. If it's above anchor VWAP, the average participant from that point in time, earnings, is above water. If it's below that anchor VWAP, they are below water. It's pretty simple. It's pretty easy. You can use that to kind of help guide and further your analysis. So I will be leaving that there and looking to trade Microsoft probably later on this week, potentially. We do have other big tech earnings. On the other sense, we have a potential gap fill here. The market has been filling gaps in other big tech names. We'll go over those shortly. So 396.66 is that gap fill. I don't think that's out of question, especially with how weak this is overall. But Microsoft, it's a company. It's a long-term. It's a big tech company. I don't think it's going anywhere. It's going to because it's so big, it's going to have some challenges adapting with AI. And unlike smaller companies, they can integrate AI very quickly and help build and all things like that. But that's a different discussion. Let's move on to Nvidia. Nvidia continues not to really do much. I have an anchor VWAP from the all-time high. It's holding it. I have an anchor VWAP from these prior lows. It's holding it. It really looks good, but this area continues to be supply. So really, until it breaks this area, let's just call it 193. You can say 195 for good measure. Once it breaks 195 and actually holds it, then maybe we make a run up to 211. We don't have earnings until February 25th. So we have a few weeks to potentially make a move here. We shall see. It just kind of depends on what the overall market's doing. And we'll go from there. Apple had killer earnings, actually. Their revenue is 143.8 billion, up 16% year over year. iPhone sales was 85.3 billion, which was 23% higher. That was a record high. Tim Cook basically called the demand simply, quote, simply staggering, end quote. China's making a comeback at 38% year over year. And so gross margins were at 48.2% year over year. Cash flow was at 53.9 billion. So they killed it. They had a very good earnings. You could see that basically price held. It stopped at this 200 EMA, bounced off of it. We waited till earnings, and now we shall see. If we want to carry on with these prior supply or support and resistance zones, it's at this area here. And then if we break that, potentially we can get to 265. But let's look at a shorter time frame here. Going back to earnings, I think it's another good idea to put an anchored VWAP on earnings, so you have an idea of since that point in time, i.e. earnings, where the average participant is. And you can see the average participant is up from the earnings. Also, we are above the 3-day pivot. Apple is actually setting up pretty nicely. I'm going to give it a couple more days just to let the full earnings news to digest. But overall, it's looking like it is setting up for a potential run. Maybe if we get a little pullback to set a higher low versus here, you could also set an anchored VWAP from this low. It's typically, oh, look at that. That's exactly where the earnings sell off held. So there's a little interesting little tidbit there. Any information is information. All right, Amazon. We have earnings on Amazon this week on Thursday. It hasn't really been doing much. It's basically just waiting for earnings to come. That's how I see it. I'm not going to touch it until then. You can see that it's also not doing anything. But there's a lot going on in the background of Amazon, not just about selling. There's a lot of space exploration and things like that with Bezos. So Amazon's not going anywhere. And Amazon, I think I read something about Amazon being like in the copper mining business now, just recently this past week. So that was pretty interesting, I thought. All right, Broadcom, we still have not gotten the gap fill here. I'm still, or I was anticipating it. Stopped about halfway through. 200 EMA is still below. Overall, it's not doing anything. Earnings is estimated to be around here. It's a waste of time right now. Let's move on. Meta had killer earnings as well. Huge gap up. Nice bottom and tail. We had an inside day on Thursday. We're in this prior earnings gap here, so we filled the top side. Now I don't know if we're going to get some selling to fill the bottom side, or even get some selling to now fill this earnings gap. Either way, revenue was $59.89 billion. It was up 24% year over year. EPS was $8.88, up 11% over the year. Ad revenue was $58.14 billion. That was up 24%. Impressions were up 18%. Price per ad was up 6%. Daily users was up was 3.5 billion, which is a record high. That's 7% year over year increase. And so they are also, so what's the difference between Meta and Microsoft? Meta is actually seeing some money, some revenue being generated from AI and their ads. And I think some AI agents that they're using. So AI is actually working in their favor versus Microsoft and other companies that have huge CapEx spending. They're not seeing that AI revenue just yet. And so I think that was the main and big difference between Meta. The other names, they had good revenues, but Meta is the one that is bringing in revenue specifically from AI, even though they are having a ton of CapEx spend. So really the takeaway there, the core ads are printing money. AI spend is massive, but paying off fast. So it's a classic beat and race. Let's go to Netflix. Netflix, it's at a prior support area here, so it's kind of chopping around. It's been getting crushed. I took a couple of shorts on here over the past 2 to 3 weeks or so. I haven't been involved lately, but this is just tanking down. If this loses $82, heck, I don't know. Maybe it can go down to here. 74 could potentially be next. It looks like there's actually a gap down here. Yeah, there's a gap down here. So this low is 73.62. So maybe 73.62 would be the next target if 82 fails. If we go on a shorter term time frame here, you can see the pressure is still down. We're still below the 3-day pivot. This is just kind of chopping and consolidating. What you really want to look for is what happens after this if not after, if this earnings low is broken. The average participant is from earnings is below water. So it's still looking weak. I would still look for a short in Netflix. Let's move on to Tesla. Tesla also had earnings this week. It gapped up some 2%. It didn't really do anything except sell off once it did that. It found support around prior support areas. This is a little demand zone here. It just continues to chop sideways. However, the biggest thing I would say that Elon said is basically Tesla is no longer a car company. We are now we are an AI robotics company now. And so Austin, Robotaxi also in Austin, they have no safety drivers in them now. And the Cybercab production really starts to ramp up in April of 2026. We have Optimus Robotics Gen 3 reveal soon. They're installing lines, and so there's a whole bunch of things going on. Their energy storage, they had a record Q4 quarter, which was up 29%. Total revenue was $24.9 billion, which is actually down 3% year over year. So this was their first annual drop ever. And so if it weren't for, number one, Elon, and also their AI and autonomous and their abundance story, then this probably would have been a very different reaction. but it still continues to do nothing. Google looks phenomenal. I will be actually looking for an entry in Google potentially this week. You can see if you want to go down to a shorter 30-minute time frame, it has a nice little base here. And then it broke out, had a nice little bull flag to the short-term 8 and 21 EMA, bounced off the 21 EMA, and now it's just kind of resting at these highs. So going back to the daily, this looks great. It has a nice bottoming tails here, which tells us they are buyers. It is over the 3-day pivot. It's over the daily pivot. And so it looks good overall. Google should be somewhere you should be focusing on. Crowdstrike looks bad. It just continues. It's broken. I still think we get down to 408 to 404, 400-ish, 410-ish, whatever you want to call it, area. I will actually be looking for a short in Crowdstrike. ServiceNow had earnings this week, got crushed, huge volume. The story is the same. It broke this prior support here on a pretty big gap down. If this continues down, it's now back in this consolidation zone back in July of 2023, July to September, October of 2020, November of 2023. So a few month consolidation here. It's back in that zone, so maybe it chops around here and finds support. If it doesn't, it could tag 102. Overall, I would not be trying to catch a falling knife here. Yes, this is pretty sold off. You could get a pretty strong bounce here, but short-term wise, it is underwater. It's under the 3-day. So I wouldn't be touching this on the long side just yet. Average participant since earnings is, I misplaced that, let me see, is above water so far. But really, not super. Okay, Palantir. It's got smoked. Each time it hits here, this area specifically, this 150-ish to 145 area, it bounces. It did that last time. It's in a short-term downtrend. Lower lows and lower highs are being made. It's now spending time underneath the 200 EMA. And so we do have earnings on Monday. We'll see where it goes. I did not look up expected moves, so go look up the expected move, draw those lines out below and above, and see where we end up at. Overall, I won't be touching it until we do earnings. But there are people pointing out, which I can see it. It's not technically correct because the right shoulder is higher than the left if you want to call this a head and shoulders pattern. But either way, it's there. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder. There's a neckline. So that neckline is at 145, 150 support. We shall see what happens on earnings Monday. I'm not touching it, and I don't think you should either, especially don't hold, not financial advice, but I would not advise holding into a binary event if you're trading, especially earnings. All right, and Robinhood continues to do nothing. Now this is spending time underneath the 200 EMA. These short-term MAs are getting hit, going down to a shorter time frame. It broke the few-day lows here. Now it's at a retest area. This could continue to sell off. Otherwise, it could look below this level, fail to accept, and then rip. So from failed moves comes fast moves. You can see that this area right here was an obvious area where it broke those lows, came back and retested, and then continued to sell off. So this is, it continues to sell, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not really doing much. It's staying in this huge zone. I mean, you do have from highs to now, you do have a 35% dip, a 35% haircut, 35.34. So I don't know. I'll be waiting for earnings, and otherwise, I'm not doing anything. All right, let's move on to XLF. BRKB, that's not really doing anything. JPM didn't do anything. Visa had earnings this week. If anything, this actually looks kind of short. I would look for a break around this level here. If it does that, especially if 318 doesn't hold, this is probably going to continue on down potentially to this 304 area. So Visa, it does indeed look short. Mastercard also had earnings. It had a nice little pump, but look, in the grand scheme of things, it's not doing anything. Bank of America, we can skip that. Eli Lilly, it's not doing anything. J&J, in the XLV sector. This guy is driving XLV right now. You can see that it looks very good. Higher highs and higher lows are being made. 80 EMA is up, 21 EMA is up, 50 EMA is up, 200 EMA is up. This thing is just ripping. So if you are looking for a strong name in the healthcare sector, J&J is your name. I wouldn't necessarily chase it up here. Maybe a little pullback to the 8 or 21 EMA wouldn't be that big of a deal, or some sort of consolidation like this. But if you want to hashtag that out, you can say, hey, there you go. He had that breakout of level, came back, retested, and then it continued on. So you might want to look at something like this. You could even draw a downtrend line like that and say, hey, look, it broke out and it ripped from there. So J&J looks pretty good. Let's go to AbbVie. It's not doing anything. GE's not doing anything. Caterpillar had pretty solid earnings. You could see it's breaking out to all-time highs. It's 3.3% away from all-time highs. What we could do, take the anchored VWAP, put it on that earnings, and then monitor where individuals are 2 to 3 days out prior to earnings. If there is a pattern to draw as time goes by, then you can draw that. But just for now, for an example, if you just want to draw some lines, connect some lows and some highs together, see where price goes from there. Overall, it looks pretty decent though. So Caterpillar, I would keep that on your list. Let's move on to RTX. RTX actually looks pretty solid too. It had earnings on the 27th of January. So this looks pretty nice. Yes, it broke these highs, ran the highs and failed, but now it's holding the 8 EMA. Honestly, I would keep an eye out for RTX above, I'd say above 202. I'll put an alert on there, especially if because this is that consolidation that I was just talking about. If you want, what was it? Where was it? What was I just talking about? Was it J&J? It was J&J. So some sort of consolidation. RTX is kind of getting that here. So if it breaks out, it can easily, maybe not easily, but it has potential to continue the run here. All right, let's move on. Walmart has a nice push here, pull back to the 21 EMA, and continues on up. So trend is your friend. Walmart somewhere to look at. Costco is getting hit right now. It had dividends on Friday, pulling back to the 200 EMA. This is a nice push. So this could be the start of a new trend here. Actually, if you want to draw some lines, you can go here, say, hey, look, we have a trend line, now that downtrend line. Now that downtrend line is broken. Now what we can do is take the anchored VWAP, put that at the most recent low or the lowest low, and then we look for a pullback to that anchored VWAP for it to hold, and then that will set a higher low versus this low, and then we look for that new trend reversal of higher highs and higher lows being made. So maybe a little bit more of a dip here. This might be it. That's a pretty strong move. Off of the low, 17%, right? So it's pretty good. Pretty nice pump. We have earnings there coming up in, what is that? The March. So we got some time on earnings for Costco here. PG, nothing to do. Coca-Cola, boring. PM, nothing to do. ExxonMobil, energy is an area to focus on. Exxon, it's been running. As you can see, if you want to look at the weekly here, we broke out of this huge range. We're hitting all-time highs in Exxon. So I made a mention of it a few weeks ago. I think it was around here, but we still had some areas of supply above, and it's been broken out. So energy is somewhere to focus. CVX, also Chevron is an area to focus. So Chevron and Exxon had earnings. They both did very well. This nice consolidation here. It broke out. I would, again, take the anchor VWAP from the earnings, and you can use that as an area of interest. It's above the 3-day, it's above the daily pivot. The short-term EMAs are up, the long-term EMAs are up. So overall, energy is a place to be at this point in time. Let's move on to ConocoPhillips. I actually drew this a few weeks ago, and it seems to be playing out a little bit. Basically what I was calling, hey, downtrend line. Now consolidation, it broke. So phase 4, phase 1, and now I think it's starting a phase 2 uptrend. I can just pull this right on over. Broke out, retest, and now it's going higher. So COP, trend reversal, something to look at. NEE, look at this, cup and handle. Nice break out of here, pull back, and now it's breaking out only 6.2% away from all-time highs. If we want to zoom in a little bit, it's got a nice bottom tail on Friday. Earnings had a nice move. We can take the Acre VWAP, put it on wrong one. We can put it on earnings. Look at where the average participant is above or below the Anchor VWAP. Average participant from this point in time, earnings, is above. Prices above the 3-day pivot, above the daily pivot. Honestly, this looks pretty darn good, especially if it wants to break and hold. I'd say this area. Even if you want to be very specific of 89.17, I would watch that. Break of 90, basically call it, and it looks pretty good to continue on. Let's go to no, Duke, nothing, no. CEG. Actually, CEG is a place to look for. It's getting hit. It broke these lows here. So there's a lot of potential supply that could be coming out. So I would just be mindful of that. Sorry, the lines weren't working there. So it broke that. So I would look for a retest here. Maybe it even did it already. It kind of flagged to the 8 EMA, and it looks like it's gonna continue on down. So CEG might be a nice short. Nothing in nothing in retail here, or real estate, I should say. Well, nothing PLD, nothing. Nothing AMT, QE, nothing LIN, nothing. Let's talk about some metals. Actually, no, I lied. Let's go crypto. I have to mention this. I've been calling, hey, 75K is not out of the question. Not that I knew it was going to happen, but it's a scenario that could have happened, and it has happened. So we hit the 75K level. Excuse me, 75,555. And so, Michael Saylor, he's break even over 5 years. I think he's really been trying to buy it. So it's not much of an investment, unfortunately. Long-term Bitcoin holders, whatever, you do you. I support you in your choices, but short-term trading here, this is breaking. Maybe it holds this 75. If it doesn't hold 75, maybe 70 would be next. And then, we'll go from there if that happens. Let's move on to metals. Gold. I hope you guys, for those of you that are trading futures, I hope you are safe. These are highly leveraged. It has been extremely hard to manage risk. I've been staying out of metals, trading commodities and futures, just simply because of that. Huge move in one day, 12% down. And if you want to look at, there's GLD, your ETF for you, 10% down one day. Gold miners, 12%, 12% ABX. Silver got crushed, 31% in one day. I really just hope you guys were safe. SLV, 29%. Here are the miners. They all got crushed, right? So metals got crushed on Thursday and Friday. I would just be careful trading this stuff. A lot of people got hurt, and I hope you were not one of them. If you need help managing your risk, obviously subscribe. I'll do what I can to explain risk management and what's appropriate. But ultimately, I think it's good to join our Discord group because we're pros and we understand how to manage risk, not just press buttons and pray. Either way, MSTR, another interesting one here, breaking this consolidation lows, coming back to test it. If Bitcoin continues to be low, continues to sell, then MSTR is most likely a short. TSM has been strong, but not really doing anything. And then Oracle is kind of tied up with AI, and Mr. Sam Altman is running around asking for, I don't want to say handouts, but asking for money. It seems like his behavior is questionable on the health of OpenAI. And so Oracle is tied deeply to them. And you can see I drew a little bear flag here. If this continues lower, it looks like it is. If you want to dive down to a 30-minute chart, we can see that a lower high has been made. Right now, we have a higher low on the 30-minute. Again, this is it's below the 3 days, below the prior day. This looks like a short to me as well. Oracle is a potential short for the week. All right. Hopefully you guys found that valuable. I know it was a lot to cover. It was a big earnings week. And we have earnings coming up next week as well. After close on Monday, we have Palantir. I track that one closely. We also have Disney if you guys care about that before Monday opens. On Tuesday, PM, AMD. So that's a pretty important one, especially in the tech world. PayPal is pretty important as well. Wednesday, we have Uber. After close, we have Google, we have ARM, we have Qualcomm. Then Thursday, we have Amazon. And for those of you that trade IREN, IREN, that is on Thursday. And then MSTR, that is also on Thursday. We have more oil coming up. We have energy coming up. So another big week in earnings. And then economic data. Monday, we have ISM PMI. We have JOLTS on Tuesday. We have ISM PMI on Wednesday, and then Friday we got non-farm payroll. So it's another busy week coming up. Manage your risk, do your homework, prepare. If there's nothing to do, don't just sit there and press buttons. A pro will sit on their hands and know when to trade. If right now is that 80% of the time you're doing nothing and sitting on your hands, remember cash is a position. Like, subscribe, comment, engage, and I'll see you next week. Later.